All right. It is December 3rd, 2024. It's Daniel Friedman. This is going to be a 2024 review, preview. Goals of this stream. Well, overall, to enact a public human preflection. Public, so that you may know, perhaps to update, perhaps to engage, or perhaps not this time. Human. Of course, AI can and will be used for the interpreting, summarizing, and applying. And preflection, anticipating a later, fuller reflection. And isn't that how it always already is? Anticipating that we'll be able to reflect. Later in 2024, and there's still almost a month to go, I do expect and prefer to take a different reflection. In this shorter stream, likely, I seek to convey some of the more bibliographic research elements of the year, things that make it into the publications table. And I hope that that will enable the 2024 review, not preview, to be everything that it can be for myself and all, reflecting the quality and the interactions that happened this year. Also, for those who might be live chatting during this last minute stream or commenting in the coming 2 to 3 weeks on YouTube, it may, just may, weave back into reality in ways strange. And also this page itself during the stream might serve as something like a notepad, interface, curation space, or blanket. All right, so the link that I'm in is in the video description. This is in my personal public Coda site. Let's focus on the review preview. I'm going to quickly make a new column that will let us filter down to the ones that we haven't looked at yet. Okay, so again, these are just some of the things that played out this year. We will go through them, and there will be more to come. There's a lot more from digging and following rabbit holes around this site and elsewhere. Just wanted to cover some of the more bibliographic, paper stream-like components. So, okay, first, archive section. There's one element here. Archival snapshot of the System Science, Education, and Knowledge Engineering Group from 2022 to 2024. This was a project that began as a dual education and knowledge engineering for system science imperative in 2022 and continued through 2024. Although we can say and was snapshotted in 2024. This was a great collaborative project. We went many, many, many directions during those 2 years. Coda, it's possible, 3 dots up there, print and PDF, export to PDF, pages, entire doc. And that enables downloading and publication of documents like that one. Uploaded it to Perplexity, so that allows discussion and summary, all these kinds of things that AI can do, which are awesome. Briefly, though, to review the structure, after the Washington, D.C. conference for the ISSS, International Society for System Science, in June 2024, we had a phase 2. That was a great phase. Prior to that, we had, and during phase 2 as well, had a lot of fun projects, talking about various aspects of education and research and knowledge engineering for system science. Tons of topics, great interactive group, many contributors, was able to snapshot that and put it up there on Zenodo. Bring this over. All right, software. I may add a bunch more softwares that were produced this year, but one that was published was the Form Index, Formi Integrated Database Exploration. And I probably will add more softwares. This was analyzing the Formi, or Formis, myrmecological database, which was curated literature of several tens of thousands of ant-related publications, and I took in the full bibliography and used some methods for visualization of different aspects of this literature database. Presentation, also many more presentations could be added here. The one that is added as a full Zenodo publication, though, of course, side note, I look forward to futures where publishing isn't so fragmented. This was from September of this year, Math Art Stream number 8, which was looking at William Blake and active inference together, and Shanna Dobson brought in the Kierkegaard and Gothic. The stream and the work was in the Math Art series at the Active Inference Institute, and so I brought in that fourth point of the TET, William Blake, and sought to spin. Looking at the different edges, reviewing some of the earlier presentations, like at 52 Living Ideas and Synergetics Livestream 17.2, talked about Blake and the Gothic, Blake, Math and Science, talking about William Blake and active inference, free energy principle, particular partition, cognitive science, metacognition, narrative structures, narrative unbound, category theory, mirrors, perspective swapping, and ending on a big blank page. Essay. Just one in this category. This was written and published as part of a quite pricey book on the history of NFTs, non-fungible tokens. This book was published by Taschen, and it's described as encompassing the entire NFT ecosystem from algorithmic art to avatars, the first major art historical survey of this field. Includes 10 academic essays. I wonder if ours was included, and in that categorization, and richly illustrated profiles of key artists. So this is a art publication with some beautiful physical elements, and this was written with a colleague from Curio Cards named O.C. Ripley. The PDF for all of these are available on the site. And this was a short piece that we wrote. So here are the 30 Curio cards. I wonder if that's just in the proof, or I wonder if those are missing. Here are the 3 that I drew the art for. 24, 25, and 26. And they are scanned images, digitized scanned images of drawings that were made. As far as we know, pending revision, these are the first representations on Ethereum or possibly any other blockchain of an art piece that was made from a physical analog object and then digitized. People definitely debate what is art, what is digital art, all these different things. However, as far as I know, these are the first blockchain NFTs of art that was physically created and then digitized. And O.C. Ripley, a cool Curio community member, and I wrote this short blurb. live streaming. Here, won't review them, so we can spend the next major section of this stream on the, quote, papers, although I don't know how many of them ever have been printed. And for me, this year, the live streams broke down into mainly two categories. The streams on my personal channel, like this one, and the streams on the Active Inference Institute channel. Won't go into those here. Okay, papers. Let's zoom out, see a little bit about these papers. For each of them, we have title, URL, the publication venue, collaborators, the DOI or other identifier, PDF, keywords. So, starting at the bottom. Okay. Active Inference Institute and Active Inference Ecosystem version 2, 2024 snapshot. This was a large, awesome team where we developed the interactive living document for the Institute. So the living link is included. And this was, again, downloaded and a linearized version, 105 pages long, that contains all different kinds of information ranging from structural, organizational information about us, on through different projects, different things happening in the ecosystem. Lots of great discourse included and outside of this snapshot. This was the second version of this Institute and Ecosystem piece. The first version was written in Google Doc in a long linear format. This one was broken then out into the more modular, moving towards blocks of docs, coda-type, collaborative compositional writing. And now that we have it in that living doc form, it's going to be awesome to see what it does, weaving into forms like Wiki and more. Next paper, Temporal Depth in a Coherent Self and in Depersonalization, Theoretical Model. This was a collaboration that was look at the paper if the link doesn't load. Spearheaded by Alexei Tolshinsky and with other collaborators, Mike Levin, Chris Fields, Lance DaCosta, Rachel Murphy, David Pickens. And this paper applied different insights from Mike Levin's work, from active inference, free energy principle, first principles of intelligence, active inference, dynamical systems, looking at the role of temporal depth in dissociative episodes, something that Alexei is an expert in. And scrolling through, we find images from Mike Levin's work, classic Markov blanket images, I'm looking for the figures. Figure 3 and Figure 4 are small, but they were drawn on paper with Sasha and I. So here's the self as a single attractor. Here's a possible attractor landscape in DID. The local minima corresponding to alters are surrounded by a deeper global minimum corresponding to a coherent self. So that was fun, always cool to work with people with domain expertise and who want to connect to the kinds of things that are happening in active inference. Okay, next paper. FarmWorks decentralized AI agents for personalized solutions. This is a grant application still pending at this moment. It was part of an application to the Future of Life Institute for a grant program called How to Mitigate AI-Driven Power Concentration. We propose to develop FarmWorks and to see what FarmWorks is about. Vladimir Balin, who led a big part of this project, works with the VinQ platform, and that's a Internet of Things type sensor and decentralized AI platform for farms, working with some farms in Europe. And so this team consisted of several colleagues from the Institute, several colleagues from Vladimir's work, friends of friends, friends of MetaGov, and it's still pending. We continued on with this work in the meantime, and it's exciting to see so many things that could be said here. How these teams form and do the very human work of getting to know each other and giving feedback on each other's writing and contributions. Like, at this point, so deep in the game in 2024, we know that we could download everyone's citations or one word or one sentence from each of them and crank it into Perplexity and write a grant, and we can do it in even a higher throughput fashion than through the interface in the browser, like in the field shift work that also Vladimir collaborates on. So, though, what becomes the rate limiting step? And it's the multi-scale commitments to really follow through on what is proposed. And so exploring that, how do we really figure out what the equation is? Is it VinQ plus active inference equals FarmWorks? What is it that's really going to happen? And that aspirational, exciting energy with having a team of global collaborators and working on something that can carve out the attention and the space and the time to do it, not just to spin out more and more hypotheticals about what the grant could be. Like, just to give an example, you just copy the abstract in and say, write a 10-paragraph grant on this. And this itself could have been reached via some other kind of short prompt engineering. And again, blocks docs, field shift, there's ways to go even further than this. But it's like, okay, we can spin out the content. We can dilute it with the trained semantics. But how do we bring something wild and real into the picture? And these are just conversations that echo through eternity. Next paper. From neuronal packets to thought seeds, a hierarchical model of embodied cognition in the global workspace. This was very fun, working with Prakash Kavi and his PhD supervisor, Gorka Lopez. I met Prakash through the Institute, through the textbook group, and we had many developments and discussions around, of course, active inference. He connected this to his own interests and training in contemplative traditions. And there's a lot more that this is just the tip of the iceberg of, in terms of coding and the implementation, as well as stretching more into the contemplative metacognitive, as well as more into the multi-scale evolutionary. It's also always fun to figure out how to clearly convey linearly these different ideas. The big picture for the thought seed is fields or graphs of nodes, each themselves packets, can be nested to include packets in this sort of fractal-ish nature. that lends itself to the kinds of hierarchical cognitive / metacognitive models. There are ways to think about the self-organization of smaller packets. This is building on the packets and parcels work, and think about how those more atomic or axiomatic or smaller scale enclosures themselves engage in a multi-scale nesting that moves from the more statistical first mind, like neural network connectivities, on through the more neurosymbolic second mind type interactions, and even towards the third mind type metacognition modulating between the first and the second. Next paper. This was with Nassim Dahush, Enhancing Population-Based Search with Active Inference. So I met Nassim through DSci, online friend. We're going to do a stream on this next Friday, I believe. This was a fun development. Nassim has worked in different optimization and probabilistic computing paradigms. And so we focused on the traveling salesman problem, which is about visiting the nodes of a graph, like cities, in the shortest possible circuit. And there's graphs where that's super easy. There's graphs where that's quite difficult. And we applied some variational free energy based optimization and found that in comparison with other heuristics, population-based multi-iteration like meta-heuristics, aiming to transform traditionally reactive algorithms into more proactive systems, that we could bring in the variational free energy that way. And in the GitHub repos especially, there's some interesting patterns where the active inference ant colony optimization does marginally, like less than 1% or small amounts, worse as compared to the baseline in the majority of cases. However, in some cases does vastly better, so that the average performance is higher. And then that would enable situations like having the baseline and the active inference enriched version both operate. So that's only a 2x cost for computational resources. And then you just pick whichever one is better. So cool to see how these really applicable, analytically intractable at certain scale type problems, like traveling salesman problem, can be addressed with a combination of some of the coolest stuff out there, ants and active inference. The next paper, I believe, may be the longest title of any paper that I've ever engaged in. The title is Comments Submitted by Block Science, University of Washington, APL, Applied Physics Lab, Information Risk and Synthetic Intelligence Research Initiative, IRS-IRI, Cognitive Security and Education Forum, CogSec, and the Active Inference Institute, AII, to the Networking and Information Technology Research and Development National Coordination Office's request for comment on the creation of a National Digital Twin R&D Strategic Plan, NITRD 2024-13379. This is a 10-page publication. First, there's a cover letter, followed by black and white logos, description on our organizations, and the following 8 pages describe a little bit of what we have to say at this time in this forum about digital twins. And we make some insights and recommendations into research and development activities relating to digital twins and cyber physical systems digital systems and analytical systems that interact with physical systems, and we're able to touch upon a variety of pieces. Again, just the tip of the iceberg. Really interesting discussions around what does cognitive security mean in this era. Next paper, this is in Ecology and Evolution. Chemical and transcriptomic diversity do not correlate with ascending levels of social complexity in the insect order Bladoidea. This is with Merrick Gullion, Mark Harrison, Dino McMahon, and Jan Bollesbeck, who I met many years ago. And in his work with European termite colleagues, they had a bunch of data sets related to cuticular hydrocarbons and gene expression and data on the natural history of different termites. So I was able to hopefully help in a few ways, though they did all of the empirical component of this, and look at how some different social factors, again, one can quibble with high and low social ladder type metaphors for sociality, but how do phylogenetic approaches in complexity science help us take a look at different divergences in terms of what's inferred phylogenetically from the genome, what about gene expression differences, and cuticular hydrocarbon chemical distances. So a little bit of entomology coming through. Okay, I'm going to continue to jump up a little bit. The work, I'll go to the newer version. Aligning active inference ontology to sumo. This was a very generous co-authorship led by Dave Douglas. He made many important connections. First off, has made many connections over the years and contributions to the Institute and to many, many, many other epistemic communities. He's also, in this document, connected the sumo, suggested upper merged ontology by Adam Peace, with our active inference ontology. And this is pointing the way, connecting very powerful upper ontological methods to a mesoscale type, but still quite general active inference ontology in support of everything from better establishing the rigor of the intrinsic logic of the active inference ontology on through different domains where sumo and or active ontology matter. Next paper, Bridging Gaps in Image Meme Research, a multidisciplinary paradigm for scaling up qualitative analyses. This is a peer-reviewed article published in Journal of the Association for Information Science and Technology with RJ, and the work in this multi-year eco-meme, image meme collaboration has been led by Marigela Mascarenhas. This paper came out of a workshop that was held by JSIST, where the authors of a special issue came together and shared their past work, gave each other feedback, and then peer-reviewed the papers. And we continued to expand upon the DRE 3 model, which is the digital rhetorical ecosystem model. We'll look at an image. These eco-meme papers, other than Marigela being an awesome collaborator, these papers are fun because they include primary meme research, and we include image memes as figures. Tell me more about how a virus can escape from a level 4 biolab, but can't get past a mask with little duckies on it. That's figure 2. That's an image meme using the condescending Wonka template that claims masks are ineffective against COVID-19. People could definitely read into that and read different claims and intentions and all of that, and that's exactly what we're getting at with the Dre 3. I'll skip down. Here's a summary of Dre 3. It's a 3-layer approach to modeling rhetorical informational ecosystems. There's the instrumental layer. This is like the syntactic. This is the direct primary artifacts as they occur. Like that bird was there at that time. The hidden layers on the bottom are the kinds of latent factors which are not necessarily part of the world. For example, it could be a risk summary variable, or it could be the novelty score of a scientific paper. So the paper itself is in the instrumental layer, and the novelty score, the danger score, radicalization, or something like that would be in the latent factors that a given entity is going to infer. And the Dre 3, as part of the work of scaling the currently qualitative rhetorical type analyses that Marigela is an expert in, situates these rhetorical networks in between the primary sensory artifacts and the deeper latent inferences that are being made. RJ had a lot to contribute about how to make that collaborative and high integrity. Okay. 2 active inference collaboration papers, and then 4 papers that were written either directly or with feedback from Dean. So let's go into the Dean stream component. Okay. Here's a paper with a long title, but it's kind of the physics of life format. This paper is called Why Paleolithic Rock Stars Were Both Enigmatic and Sporadic, a comment on snakes and ladders in paleoanthropology, from cognitive surprise to skillfulness a million years ago. Written with first author Dean. Snakes and Ladders was a paper by our colleagues and friends Hector Manrique, Carl Friston, and Michael Walker. And as part of the norms around the Physics of Life Reviews journal, they solicit commentaries which are given editorial oversight, but not really deep peer review, and they're short papers. So we were able to have a somewhat freer hand, but it was a great sort of estuary moment to be able to be in this classic journal alongside and in comment on their incredible, very well-cited, well-reasoned work, and ours being a little bit like kind of sneaking in, but having fun and hopefully adding some insights as well. So that was the most official of our works. Okay, now here's 3 papers that were mainly from the beginning of the year that were kind of exploring new genres for me. So first, published on Valentine's Day, 2024, Push and Pull, a priming sequence. So this is a 2-page paper. Again, paper if you can call it that. The primary objectives are to explore the decoupling of cognitive, which is to say covert attentional, and bodily, which is to say overt behaviors, and provide a sequence of hands-on computer exercises for further exploration, which is to say, what if? The half-page discussion introduces this duality or dialectic of push and pull. Pull is the teleological, goal-oriented, gravity, love, curiosity type pulling, which starts at the moment of pull and continues on through the culmination or even the overshoot. In contrast, push is more like hitting a golf ball or a baseball, and then the ball continues to travel even after the push action has been performed. So here's the exercise. As always, I'm looking for people's thoughts and feedback and questions. I have a fair number of exercises personally that are in this kind of genre. So if people are finding it useful, for sure let me know how or where. Otherwise, I'll continue to bring out these kinds of things as I see. So here, there's 2 points, A and B. This can be done with your eyes. It can be done with your hand on the mouse. It could be a key press pointing up and down. It could be a joystick. It could be 2 concepts. It could be the concept of A and the concept of B. It could be 2 perspectives, perspective swapping. It could be frames of mind. And this sequence of activities will lead you from laissez-faire, just sort of like, okay, A to B, what's the issue? Just going back and forth, to having awareness in your movements, all the way on through the 8th step, where you'll be able to swap while generating novel speech. And probably go a bunch of other ways too. So for sure, let me know which ways you take it if you go. Next paper, again, highly benefiting from Dean's commentary. 6-page paper, Wayfinding in the Infinite Imaginarium, Juxtaposing Epistemic Tempos and Modes. This one connects very nicely to push and pull in that it's about the juxtaposition of multiple cognitive or epistemic strategies. As we head through and past January 2024, I wondered if/that. So that's where I was in January, how I was. This one, it might be worth to just quickly go through the sections because it moves by pretty fast. The situation is called the Infinite Imaginarium, which is a Shannon Dobson reference. Always using infinity and imaginarium and all of that. And there's 3 zones. There's the known, which is the clean, well-lighted place to read books. There's the dark, which is the unknown. And then there's the gray zone, which is the space between. It's Forager specific. It's like Twilight is depending on somebody's light sensitivity and all these other features, not just like some region is called the gray zone. The background section introduces what are going to be one of the key push and pull type concepts, which is this idea of stacking up dominoes. The idea of phonemes being stacking linearly like dominoes, and how that relates to speech and language. Sentences are structured speech acts. Other formatting and grammatical cues, to say nothing of prosody and spoken word cues. Cough, cough. The 2 epistemic modes, which can be connected to the push and pull, but are not exactly the same, it's another axis here, are gap filling and gap respecting. In gap filling, the dominoes are being laid down like a road. So it's like, we need to bridge these 2 islands, or we need to fill it in with concrete between them so we can drive out. Like, okay, we know what the temperature measurement was at point 1, and we know at point 3, now we need to fill in what's the temperature at point 2. But In contrast, gap respecting has this gapped, fast character. A question assembled like a sentence is a buildup with the linearity of the sequence of symbols, followed by this flick or twist. So going out to ask questions is like heading out to the gray zone and then going right up to the trailhead and jumping from there. But you don't necessarily want to build the asphalt road after you've only asked one question. Wayfinders prepare to go out and they measure when they are back. So then there's an example situation where Alice asks Bob about where a given book is. And there are implications. Nonetheless, you are being asked by the environment, another agent, your auditory niche, your symbolic niche right now. What now? Now what? What if? Combining the epistemic imperative with the optionality capacity action preference and the forensic real-time anticipatory past, present, future interpretive plurality preference, you are always already in a situation where your agency over the strategy of the response contains a minimum of 2 archetypal modes. And again, a restatement of these 2 modes. Last paper from the collaborations with Dean. So many other fun artifacts, but these are just the paper ones. Fourfold fields of quantum dreams. This is, I don't know what kind of genre it is, other than to say it really kicked off how deep we went into Who's on First, Americana, baseball lore, all these kinds of things happening. So here's the picture with this paper. We/you are at spring training for the quantum baseball team in the Southwest. We're in the training camp. This is just the big picture in the first inning. We're at a training camp for a baseball game, and we're training for that game. Here's the second zoomed in scenario. We're in the gym, resting between sets, reflecting, anticipating, perspective swapping between sets. As we're paying attention to our experience in terms of stabilities and change, we become aware of an engineered framework. This is what it looks like to become aware of a framework. This is a squat rack. It's an engineered metal framework. However, the framework concept, which is also applied to active inference and all these other things, is going to, of course, be a metaphor. Visually, we zoom in to get to this view. We're looking at where the crossbar is inserted into the holes that are lined up and drilled in that metal frame. And right off the bat, there's so many things to say about the drill. Well, if they weren't lined up, then it wouldn't be straight. Or if it was all drilled, you would just have a pile of metal dust. But if it wasn't drilled, you wouldn't be able to insert the rack. You wouldn't be able to squat. There's a visual analysis. Looking at the squat rack through space, there's the recapitulation of the moon phase through time. We connect it back to the gap respecting. Look through the primary, secondary, tertiary implication. Then there's a 7th inning stretch. Listen up, fans. This year on the ballot, the gap fillers want to pave paradise with facts. They want to festoon the framework, and they want season ticket holders to pay for it. And this is a little bit of an allusion to what AI does to our cognitive gardens in the name of safety. Then there's a who's on first, who's the exec. Little dialogue, little skit. Fourth power implications and some final questions. And closing with a Shakespeare quote. So read it, comment, do with it what you will. Finally, 2 collaborative active inference papers. First one from earlier in the year, Federated Inference and Belief Sharing. This was a large collaboration led by Carl Friston. And it's an amazing paper. I revisit it semi-frequently to try to learn more, and am getting closer and closer to implementing these kinds of models. To describe what this federated inference task is, we can look to this incredible image, which I can only assume Carl made. Maybe somebody helped him. It's funny either way. And so what's happening in this situation is there are 3 sentries that are looking out towards a vertex of an equilateral triangle. So they have non-overlapping fields of view. So they're kind of like tied to a pole, or they're in their guard post and they're looking out on 3 different pieces. Then there's 2 rings that are around them. There's an inner ring and an outer ring, kind of like the perimeter, gray zone. The inner ring, it's more easy to determine what is circling. In the outer ring, it's more ambiguous what's circling. And so circling around them are either a friend or a threat going in one direction or the other. And it's switching which track and which direction it's on. And the 3 sentries are engaged in this federated inference task, message passing beliefs to each other, so that, for example, if this top one sees a given entity here, it has very high precision. It communicates that high precision and the location to the 2 other sentries. But alone, this one would have no idea because it's outside the field of view. So the 3 of them are engaged in this joint federated inference. Really cool. Really honored that Carl included myself and so many others in this work, and look forward to developing more accessible, applicable, open sourced frameworks for doing these kinds of inference methods. And then, hopefully appropriately, closing on this last publication. This was published in Entropy. It was a collaboration with Mal Albarracin, Ridya Pitlia, Toby St. Clair Smythe, Carl Friston, and Maxwell Ramstead. This brought together several elements. The first qualitative element is Husserlian phenomenology, specifically some of the prior work been done on the 3 phases of the phenomenological experience, which are retention, that which is sedimented from the past; primal impression, the rawness of the now, eye of the needle, eye of the storm, self in the eye; and protension, which means forward-looking anticipation. And the work discusses, in the setting of multi-agent, so multi-cognitive system, retention, expression, and protension, how different kinds of composabilities could exist reflecting those shared protensions. So here, was a little bit of a callback to the infer ants. The study illustrates how shared representations and goals, like locating food sources, facilitate coordinated actions within the ant colony. The ant's behavior, driven by hierarchical Bayesian inference, showcases a form of temporal integration where actions are predictive of the future, the pheromone deposition, based on the anticipated positions of resources and the inferred intentions of other ants. Like, obviously, if there was distrust or deceit in the pheromone deposition within a colony compared to a colony that didn't engage in that kind of shenanigans, the colony with the more effective, honest signaling would have a higher evolutionary persistence. And those are the kinds of signals that get eavesdropped on and get interfered with. And the last part, which was the work of Toby, was to bring in a bunch of the category theory, string diagram, and wiring and just diagrams. It's not a string diagram exactly. But to give a counting paradigm for these shared multi-agent protensions. Okay. Okay. That's it for the bibliographic review part. This was a good length. Helps me revisit. Hopefully gives you all some places to look into and reflect upon. And leave a comment on YouTube or send me an email or message in the coming 2 or 3 weeks. And I will look forward to reviewing later in 2024. Okay, bye.